Hello, this is Neil Schulman. I am the editor-in-chief of K-Exchange, Knovel's blog. As part of Knovel's Q&A series with people of interest to engineers, I'm speaking with Kenneth Wong, writer of Kenneth Wong's Virtual Desktop blog, a part of Desktop Engineering. Ken has been a regular contributor to the CAD industry press since 2000. He closely follows both the CAD industry and product lifecycle components. I know many of you regularly read his articles and blogs, so we thought you'd like a bit more of his insight. Welcome, Ken. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Neil.
Okay, for those listening, I'm based in New York City, and Ken is based out in sunny California today. Now, Ken, why did you get involved in writing not only about engineering, but specifically about CAD?
At some point, I began to realize that because digital creation has become a critical part of engineering, a lot of the things that the engineers do, they have to do this digitally before they put it into the physical realm. If you're going to build a gear, if you're going to build a box, if you're going to build a coffee maker, whatever that might be, you build it digitally inside a computer in a three-dimensional program first, before you build it with the plastic, before you build it in a manufacturing plant, or wherever that may be. So I thought engineering has shifted gear, and the virtual engineering of the product beforehand is actually just as important, if not more important, than the physical engineering itself. So that's why I begin to pay more attention to the use of computer-aided design, which is, I would argue, the first phase in engineering these days.
You've written a lot about the aging of the workforce and also on social media's effect on how people, specifically engineers, work. Now, do you think that the use of social media is going to mediate the expected knowledge drain that's coming ultimately when the baby boomers retire?
I wrote about the aging workforce effect because I was interviewing somebody in civil engineering industry and in the construction industry. And he told me about this example where one of his colleagues who was about to retire, this colleague has the ability to drive around, and simply by listening to the sound of certain pipes, certain rusting pipes that are underground, he could actually tell what's wrong with those pipes. And now, this is not the kind of information that you can find in a textbook, not the kind of information you can look up in Google. It is the kind of information that comes with the experience of having worked in this industry for a long time. Now, what's going to happen when somebody like that retired and he doesn't leave behind what he knows about how to diagnose problems like this? And the difficulty is that the younger generation that is going to inherit his work, his position, they can learn a lot of standard things. They can learn things about the discipline, about the protocols, but they're not going to be able to learn what he knows by having worked in this industry for 60, 70 years or whatever. These days, a lot of the people who are passionate about their work blogs about what they do. You can see that a lot, for instance, in people who use computer-aided design. I would say people who use, for instance, AutoCAD, people who use SolidWorks 3D design. They blog a lot about what they do, and in turn, they ended up sharing the little things that they know about how the software works and the little tricks that they use to make using the particular software easier. And they end up sharing that with the larger community. So when they do retire, then their blog still remains, and their blog, even before they retire, their blogs are already beginning to do their job in proliferating that kind of information, the kind of information that you're not going to find in a user manual, for instance. In social media, the emphasis is on sharing information, whatever you find that you think is interesting, not only things that you produce yourself, but also things that other people have written that you find interesting. You're more than welcome to share that with the people that you know. And you can do that within just a single click in Facebook, in Twitter. So I think the culture has shifted from working in isolation to working in groups and working in collaboration and sharing what you know. Social media is going to actually help prevent the loss of that kind of knowledge, that esoteric knowledge that comes only from being an industry insider for a long time.
Now, Ken, along with the social media trend, what trends in the past decade do you feel have had the biggest effect on engineering? And also, what are the most critical trends impacting the field right now?
People seem to have suddenly awakened to the notion that we can't just design artifacts anymore. We can't just design a coffee pot, but we have to design a coffee pot that takes into account how it is made, so that you know, for instance, if the coffee pot is made with certain material, that's going to have a certain kind of impact in how it gets recycled, or whether it can even get recycled. And if it is made with certain material, whether the production process is going to generate a certain amount of carbon and toss it back into the environment, and are there any ways to actually use a different kind of manufacturing process to prevent that kind of impact on the environment. Previously, we might just be thinking about producing a product. Today, engineers are encouraged to think about not just producing a product, but the whole product life cycle itself. The term that I've heard people use is cradle to cradle. So you're not thinking about just coming up with an idea and making that idea into a reality, and then you call the job done. But that's no longer the case anymore. You have to think about how your product is going to be produced and what its impact is going to be on the environment and the world at large. And throughout the use of that product in a life cycle, whether it's 5 years, 10 years lifetime, whatever that may be. And you have to think about what is going to happen during those 5 years and 10 years. And you also have to think about how people might use it in a way that you don't intend it to be used. And a lot more thinking goes into coming up with the entire product life cycle and not just the product itself. That's a fundamental shift, I think, in engineering these days.
Okay. Well, a big thanks to Ken Wong for joining us today. If you would like some more information, you can visit us at novelblogs.com, where you can find a link to Ken's blog in our blog roll. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our interview today with Kenneth Wong.
Neil, thank you very much for having me.